How do you feel about scary movies?
Growing up, I was a fan. Now I'm less of a fan.
Okay, wait, that's a weird transition. So you're a small child and you're like, yeah, scary movies. And now you're like, no.
How does that
happen?
I don't know. I think it all started with the Saw series when like the scary movies went over into like real
just gory,
like let me make you squirm. And
is that what they're doing? Because I'm pretty sure they're trying to make me pee my pants.
Well, maybe that.
And never sleep again.
They lost me at that point.
At the pee your pants point.
At the pee your pants point. That's right. That's right. But like Scream, loved Scream, the movie.
Okay, yeah, no, I'm familiar.
Yes, I was like,
you're looking at me like I'm crazy. I'm familiar. Drew Barrymore.
Yeah, that's right. Those were fun.
Yeah, they're fine. Fun is not the word I'd use, but they're fine.
Yeah, the more like thriller scary movies, I still like.
Well, now I'm just going to be thinking about Michael Jackson.
Yeah. The like kind of gory, weird. I'm just like, nah, I'm done. I don't even need this stuff anymore.
The psychological thrillers, like the ones that are scary, but they're like, but you have to use your brain to figure out like where it's coming from or whatever.
Yeah.
That I'm into a little bit more. I'm still not really into it. I cannot watch scary, suspenseful space movies.
Really?
They freak me out. Like, you don't just die in space. You die horrifically in space. You get sucked out, and like, if you're like, what is the movie where George Clooney just floats off into space alone?
Is it Gravity?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. That one
he
got
just
you.
Slowly.
That one does.
You would just be stuck in this suit, totally immobile, unable to control anything.
Space seems
and
terrifying.
Just slowly die.
Is it slow? Wouldn't you just kind of?
No, I don't think so. Because he has like a life-sustaining suit for a while.
Oh, right. Yeah. Oh, okay, yeah.
No. The quick like release from like the airlock that you see in space, like that is instantaneous, and it's like that's fine. But no.
The like being
or you're just like stuck in a spaceship and you just like can't.
What a thought experiment if that happened to me. Like,
yeah, this is my problem. I don't have a solution. Like every mother, let's see if this is true. People will let us know. I feel like most moms have thought about how they would save their child if they were on board the Titanic. I'm so tempted to text people right now. I'd be like, prove my point. Yeah. I think this is true.
Never
we
thought
think
about
how like, well, of course not. But like we think about how we would get our kids out of like scary situations or how we would get ourselves out. Like, but you can't. In space, you just have no hope.
Yeah. No hope.
I do like The Martian, but I don't think that's supposed to be a scary movie.
No. What about Interstellar?
I'm trying to remember which one that is.
That's
that's the one with Anne Hathaway and the weird timey-wimey thing.
No.
Oh.
That's with All Right.
That's Matthew McConaughey.
Matthew McConaughey.
Yeah.
Anne Hathaway. Oh yeah, I forget that she's in it too. Sorry, I think didn't she die kind of early in it? Or
I haven't seen the whole thing.
Oh, it's really.
It got really weird.
Oh, it's really good though.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm just saying scary movies are not my thing.
Matt Damon also needs to be rescued in that movie, just like The Martian.
Yeah.
He's stuck on a planet.
But isn't he a bad guy in the movie?
Of sorts.
Ruining the movie.
Yeah.
It's like 10 years old or something. I'm ruining the movie.
You're not ruining it.
This is my thing, is I have realized now as an adult how many movies are scary movies.
Yeah.
If you are a small child. So like, or maybe even an adult if you think about it. Like we were watching Wish, which we've talked about before. I don't mean to keep talking about it, but we were.
Yeah.
And it's legit scary.
Yeah,
like the bad guys, like it gets like pretty intense for a minute.
Yeah.
I mean, most Disney movies, they have like a scene. Aladdin gets super scary at some point. A friend of mine yesterday, their kid is reading the 5th book of Harry Potter. And I was like, I'm sorry, buddy. It's about to be so bad.
Yeah.
Do you remember what happens in the 5th book?
Is that the one with the no.
Okay. spoiler alert, I'm about to say what happens. So if you haven't read it, if your kid's in the car.
I've seen the movie. I haven't read the book. I stopped at 4.
Okay. So in it, Sirius Black dies.
Oh, okay.
And it's really sad.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So like, I mean, you read these things and so like, this is just a part, like, I think we're so used to seeing stories that are really sad or tragic and like, or how every Disney movie starts with the death of one of the parents or both. Right.
Yeah.
Right. No Disney character is a well-adjusted child.
Yeah.
I can't think of a single one.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm like actively trying now. I can't think of any. There may be one. Please tell me. But anyway, that's how it's like they all start.
Yeah.
Right? Because, characters need some kind of conflict in order to move into their hero phase.
Yeah.
But it's a little scary.
It's true.
And so that's just a part of life is my point. Maybe not Saw gory movie scary.
Right. Yeah.
But there's just like this knowledge that
hardship is going to happen. Something hard, scary, sad, overwhelming.
It's going to happen.
Yeah, for sure.
So it's just permeates our lives.
Yeah.
So what are we going to do about it?
Oh boy, what are we going to do about it?
So let's talk about it. And we'll talk about courage in the face of struggle. Well, I'm Becca. I'm the pastor of family ministries here at Katy First.
And I'm Mark. I'm the senior pastor here at Katy First.
Welcome to the Katy First Family Podcast, where we offer ideas, inspiration, and encouragement to help you and your family grow as joyful disciples of Jesus Christ. This week, we are talking about courage in the face of struggle, and I feel like we should have the little disclaimer again. You and I both are going on adventures this month, so we filmed one podcast a week ahead because you were going to be gone.
Yep.
And now we're doing the same thing because I'm going to be gone.
That's right.
So,
which means the sermon could change.
It could take a hard left turn.
Of this podcast, which undoubtedly is going to be amazing.
Best podcast.
But could be a few deviations from the final form. But I think we're pretty good. I think the heart of it is going to stay the same.
So we're looking at the story of Joseph, theoretically.
In theory, the sermon is about a guy named Joseph.
So tell us a little bit about the scripture and kind of start us off.
Yeah, so the scripture that we're reading is towards the end of the story of Joseph. And I don't know yet how I'm going to frame it in the sermon, but so in hindsight, you'll hear. But the story of Joseph is a winding story of betrayal and hardship and all sorts of crazy twists and turns, where he's the beloved son of his father, and then because he's of a couple of interpretations of dreams of him being greater than his brothers get angry, and most of them want to kill him. But then they settle for just selling him into slavery to...
Just settle.
Yeah, settle. We won't end his life, but we'll sell
make
him
it
off.
Way more miserable.
Then he gets sold to a guy named Potiphar, and then he kind of rises up the ranks amongst this guy named Potiphar, but then Potiphar's wife accuses him of some misconduct that gets him thrown back into prison. And then he's stuck in prison for a while, and he gets back out, and he works his way up to the Pharaoh. So by the kind of end of the story where we're jumping in, he's risen to a place of basically first in power in all of Egypt. There's Pharaoh, and then there's Joseph. And he's navigating Egypt through a season of famine. And so he has a lot of power, and a lot of people need stuff from him. And so his brothers come to him unknowingly, knowing who he is, just knowing they need food. And so they come to Joseph, ask for food. And this part of the story gets really interesting. There's a lot of back and forth, but eventually they come to realize who he is. And there's a moment where they're scared. Uh-oh, this is the brother that we did all these horrible things to. But Joseph extends grace to them. And in short, he essentially says, listen, all this bad stuff, God's done something good with it. And so it kind of becomes this reconciliation part of Joseph's story. That's an oversimplification, but we're going to read the scripture right at the end of the story. So you read the end of the story. Joseph's in power. His family's reconciled. If you jump into the end of the story, and then you sort of look backwards into all these hardship moments, what would Joseph had said to himself when he was getting sold into slavery, when he was being thrown into prison, and what was the courage that, if he knew how the end was going to turn out, could have helped him in the middle of that moment. And so that's kind of a little bit of a thought experiment that I'm going to use, just using his story and the kind of twists and turns and how it ends up. But ultimately, the sermon is really about, in the face of struggle, courage comes from us trusting that what God has placed in us is greater than whatever the circumstance that sets before us.
Yeah, that's a really powerful thought.
It is, yeah.
I just I don't know if you've said it somewhere, like in prepping for worship this week. I don't know if you said it or maybe it was in your sermon notes somewhere. And that's where I don't know. But it's so good. It's been sitting with me the last couple of days because it's this idea of whatever God has placed in us is greater than the thing we're facing. That idea of it not just being some outside force, because then it doesn't feel like just a rescue, or you know what I mean? It feels like already being pre-equipped. Yes. And for me, that is very calming. Yeah. Right? It's not a reaction, which is also part of what we've talked about in this series.
Absolutely.
It's not just a reaction.
Yep.
It's just it's a part of you. You're prepared for this.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a very calming, comforting thought to me.
Yeah. And what I plan on working through in the sermon, and again, we're on the front end of this, so hopefully this works out. Hopefully this
we'll
comes
see.
out and
let us know
how I want it to. But so what is that's been put in you, right? Yeah. And the short answer is grace. Mm-hmm. But what is that, right? That can still feel a little bit nebulous. And we've talked a lot about grace the past couple of weeks, and so I'm working on is honing in and, well, what is that's within you? Well, what is within you is that, first and foremost, what's always true about you is you're made in the image of God. You're an image bearer. Mm-hmm. So there's nothing that changes that. What is that which is within you is the stories of faith that we have, that we inherited, that we stand in, of how God, who has always been with God's people and carried them through, like we talked about last week, almost uniquely in moments of struggle is where God's grace shines the most. Mm-hmm. That's what is within you. When we jump into the New Testament and we talk about the life of Christ and the resurrection and the power of resurrection, that is what is within you. And so all these things sort of culminate together in that. I don't think the statement, what is within you, what God's put in you is greater than what's before you, has to be some sort of triumphant statement. Mm-hmm. You're going to overcome whatever obstacle. That may be true. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, it may also not be true. And so what I think that means is that whatever struggle that is before you doesn't become the thing that defines who you are. Mm-hmm. That circumstance, when Joseph is sold into slavery, he is not a slave, because what God has put into him is still, he is an image bearer of God, beloved. Mm-hmm. When Joseph is wrongly accused and thrown into prison, he is not a prisoner. His values and what makes him who he is don't have to be changed because of circumstance that is before him. When he has the chance for retribution and revenge before his brothers, it's grace and mercy that comes out.
Because that's what's within him.
Because that's what's within him.
I love that.
And so I think that has to be careful in that I don't want to preach a sermon that is sort of pie in the sky, God's grace is going to make everything Disney ending. Because that's not real life. But that's not what the sermon is saying either. It is saying that in the face of whatever our struggle is, courage comes from that which is within us that cannot be changed by that which is outside of us.
Yeah. I think as you're saying this, one of the questions I had is, why did you pick Joseph to illustrate this point?
Mm-hmm.
But I think that you kind of already summed it up, because we see him go through these circumstances that are true trauma. I think it's always funny to me how we take, and I don't mean funny, haha.
Yeah.
How we take stories like this and like they become like really common children's stories.
Yeah.
Like Joseph and his coat of many colors, like a lot of
Yeah.
kids hear that story. And it's like, you guys realize that like his brothers wanted to murder him, and then they put that coat in blood so that his dad would think
So that his dad thought he was
like
not alive anymore.
It's terrible.
Yeah.
It's honestly like, it's not a story intended for children.
Yeah.
And or it shouldn't be, dear goodness. And so it's just like, you know, the stories that the life that Joseph led was a genuinely like traumatic and unjust and just awful at times.
Yeah.
And yet you're right. It's not that even, and I don't know. I wonder too, like, because the story that happens next, right? So this ends Genesis, and then you move right into Exodus.
Yeah.
And the next line is that a Pharaoh rises to power who does not remember Joseph.
Yeah.
And all of these people that Joseph just saved,
Sets the stage for their enslavement.
they become slaves.
Yeah.
And it's so like the story keeps going, and it's incredibly difficult, and still oppression, injustice, trauma, abuse, right? Like it just keeps happening, because that's the story of humanity. This is woven into how we interact. Not the story of humanity. This is the story of how things happen.
Yeah.
And yet the story of humanity is something else. It's this grace that's within us, this image of God that's within us. Yeah. And it's tough. And one of the things we've talked about, like when we tell these stories to kids, at like Joseph's story, for instance, you start with, you know, his brothers selling him to slavery, and you go, okay, we're going to have to stop here today because we can't do the whole story. But what I want you to know is that this is the middle of the story.
Yeah.
So, you know, we have to do this with a lot of Bible stories.
Yes.
If the story is still sad, hard, scary, it's not over.
Yeah.
And for us on the ground, that may mean we may not get to see that ending the way that we want to, but we have hope and faith in the goodness of God.
Yes.
That like the end of that story is going to be good. It just may be a long time coming.
Yeah.
In that traditional way is what I mean.
Yeah.
It's just tough.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, I kind of posed this to our staff earlier this week.
I was there.
You were there.
I was there.
In our staff meeting where we talked about this and kind of like, what would be the letter you'd write to your younger self? And knowing what you know, knowing the hardship that version of you is going to experience. You can't change the story.
Yeah.
But you might be able to say a word to your younger self so that how the story unfolds, there's more courage in it. There's more grounding in it. And it's like, if we could do that to our younger self, can't we do that for ourselves in this moment? And if we can't, can we at least trust that what our scriptures tell us could be said as true of us? That's the message that we need, so that we do have a courage in the face of struggle. I'm sort of playing around. I don't know how much this will make it into the sermon, of looking at the idea of courage. The Latin root of it is just heart. So a sense of heart that plays out of something within you, so that, as you know, as it's often said, courage is not the lack of fear. It's being able to face fear, face a struggle. That's what courage is. And so one of the sort of researchers around the idea of courage has kind of talks about these 4 scenarios where there's high fear and low confidence, you can do something about it. It often leads us to cowardice.
Okay.
Where there's an over amount of fear and an over amount of confidence, it leads to sort of this sense where you're just trying to prove yourself. That's not really courage. That's kind of an overreaction. low fear, high confidence is foolishness. You should,
Okay.
there should be more fear, but you think you're way stronger. And so like just sort of looking at all the different dynamics of how these things interplay. Courage is that sort of that middle ground of life is hard, struggle is real, fear is real, and there's something that is within you that can give you strength and confidence to be able to go through that. So what is that? Mm-hmm. What is that that's within your heart? And so that's what hopefully the sermon is trying to get to, of like saying like, what is that which God has put within you? Mm-hmm. And why could we trust that? And then when we get into the struggle, again, this isn't a sermon about being triumphantly victorious over every struggle.
Yeah.
Sometimes it may be true and sometimes it may not. And, you know, what did you say a few weeks in your sermon? Where being right in the middle of God's will is the safest place is such
that was what I was told. But
version of faith.
Like, so that was the phrase, that the safest place to be is right in the middle of God's will.
Yeah.
And
this sermon isn't that.
It's not that. But you know, so the person who told me that reached back out to me and said, "Hey, I think you misunderstood what we meant by that when we were told that.
Yeah.
It wasn't you would maybe face like hardships."
Yeah.
Or you would definitely even, I think this sort of maybe even had like a focus on like persecution. But that ultimately everything would be okay.
Okay.
So like, I guess heaven was the answer.
Sure. Okay.
Which I kind of get too, but I felt a little bit bad that I like misunderstood that, because then I feel like I sort of mocked it without totally understanding. And I didn't really mean to like be rude about it. Not that this person said that I was, but it just, I think we have weird ideas sometimes. And I think we say things to ourselves when we're afraid or anxious.
Yeah.
That we feel like might be helpful, but like we've talked about before, following things all the way out to their logical conclusion, they're going to leave us up short. Yeah. And then we're going to face a situation where now we don't have the tools that we need.
Yeah.
And so this is I think, while it may look like a similar way to talk about it, it is fundamentally different, because it is changing our perception of what it means to have courage. Like you just said, with the 4 different kind of ways. It's changing our idea of, I don't know if this is the right word, so forgive me if I'm messing this up. So it changes the idea of what we think it means to be rescued or saved from. You know, I have really been fascinated lately, and I don't know if you're doing this on purpose or if this is like not you at all. But like, I just keep thinking about, I'm realizing how much stuff is just woven into who we are. How much the goodness of God actually just is in us. And I don't mean just in a way to overcome, but just like, there's so much that is innate, and that is never, I feel like, the way we talk about it. And maybe that's just my particular like background, but it was definitely like I was supposed to try to find these things from somewhere else, right? Like any good thing I got external from I had to go get it. I had to work at it. And it's not that we don't have to practice some things. Like, it's not even that you don't have to practice courage, but it's not because it's distant from me and I have to get strong enough to it. It's because it's in here, and it's just like every other muscle. It's already there. It already exists within me. I already have access to it just by being made in the image of God. And that to me is fundamentally different than looking around and trying to like take it for yourself. I mean, even just that like idea of, you know, when we come to communion, we don't grab the bread, right? We receive it. We have already received these things. That's a fundamental difference.
Makes me think of the Wizard of Oz.
I was thinking about that when you were talking about cowardice. I was like, the lion.
Right? Because like they think they need a heart. They think they need these things until they realize like they already have what they need. They had to practice it, you know? Even the language. I mean, there's the fuller context is quite a bit problematic, but there is the language as the Israelites enter into the land. Take heart, be courageous, for I go with you. Take heart. A heart is already within you.
Yeah.
God has already built and put something within you that is there.
Yeah.
For sure. And trust that is certainly greater than whatever is before you.
I just wonder if I'm getting a little maybe too meta about this. Might be that way sometimes. When Sammy was really little, I would have this thought that if I could remember what it was like to be a tiny baby and have everybody just sort of universally adore you, that I would be such a better person.
Yeah.
That if I could access those memories, that I would feel so securely held in who I was, that I wouldn't have some of the anxieties I have. And to me, this feels like that. Like an intentional accessing something that actually was given to you just upon your being. Yeah. And less you know what I mean? It's just remembering that as opposed to having to make it be so. Yeah. You know? Yeah. I wonder what it would be like to have to just live in that from birth, to just, you know what I mean? I don't know. That's why that's also why I like my job.
Well, I will say we are doing a baptism on Sunday.
I know. I'm so excited. No, we're not doing one. We're doing two.
We're doing two.
Yeah.
Lizzie and Noah.
I'm so excited.
You. And
we do love you.
What a perfect sacrament to have on a day where the invitation is to remember what's already within you, because our baptismal theology is that God's grace has always already been within you. We're just bringing that to light, and it will always continue to be with you in the midst of any struggle.
I'm going to cry now, and I'm going to cry on Sunday.
But it's perfect that we get to be able to have a baptism that sort of that pulls us back to ground zero into all this.
It's just such a gift, and whether it's because you're a friend of somebody or or their pastor or a volunteer, for VBS or whatever. Not that I just was working on those registrations or anything. Whatever role it is, when we get to look at another person and say, oh, you are good. God made you good, and you are so, so loved. Yeah. What a gift that is. Yeah. And so that's something we can do with our families. That's something you can do. There's this lady on TikTok who says that every morning you should give yourself a high five in the mirror. I think it's really funny, but just what a gift and what that would do. Yeah. Recognizing that innateness of God, not you, but that innate of God in you. Yeah. What courage that really would give you in the face of struggle. Yeah. I love it.
For sure.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today, and we hope that you have found some inspiration and encouragement for yourself and for your family. If you'd like to get our podcast delivered directly to you each week, you can subscribe or follow us on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, or Spotify. For more information about Katy First and upcoming events for your family, visit our website, katyfirst.org. We want you to know this most importantly, that in the middle of your ordinary, messy life, whatever that looks like for you in this moment, that you are not alone. You are doing a good job, and you are so, so loved.
And we hope you'll join us coming up on Sunday, and really even just the bigger season of Lent, which is coming. Fast. So the Sunday after this sermon is sort of a standalone, and we call it Transfiguration Sunday, and we're going to talk about the growth of faith. But then begins season of Lent. We've got Ash Wednesday on March 5th. We'd love for you to come eat pancakes with us the night before on March 4th. We start a new Lent study that we'd love for you to come be a part of. And March 1st, all the summer
registrations go live online.
Yeah, so a lot coming up that we'd love you to be a part of, or just back here every week where we get to see you. I put that in air quotes.
Yeah, we get to talk at you.
Reconvene.
Have a great week.
Yes, bye.